Yeah. So first of all, instead of a function, we can make components as a class. You don't want to unless you have a specific purpose to, and there's two instances in which you need class. One of them is if you're using a life cycle method. So a life cycle method is something that fires at a certain point in the life cycle of a component. So the components, there's like a pre-mount period, there's the period where they mount, then they unmount. So the life cycle methods are like will component mount, or component did mount, or component will mount. So they just, and even one that we'll see today called render, they just fire at different points of the life cycle of these components. Yeah, one thing to note about class-based components, they used to be smart components. That's what people call them, smart components. But now React is making a lot of efforts into making it, and in fact, currently you can use everything that you need to without a class-based component with hooks. So hooks are kind of the replacement. And they don't encourage you to go through and replace all your class-based components with function components to use hooks, but I think it's kind of trending in that direction. So, but for now, class-based components will have a lot of importance. So you name it class counter. So this is a class-based component, but to make it a React component, we need something special from the React package. So we've imported React's, in the React's code, it has a line that's like export default React. And that's what we're importing when we import React from React. But they also have a line that's like export component, like that or something, in which they're actually exporting a class called component. So one thing about classes is they can inherit properties and methods from their parents. So we want all the methods and stuff that comes from component in counter. So we're going to say extends component, but what error are we going to get when we try and run this? Yeah, component is not defined. That's what it'll tell us. So we can import it like this. So any exports that they do where they don't say default, it's because it's like there's a React dot component and a React dot whatever. And if we don't, so right here I could say React dot component. Component, no. Just component. Or I can abstract it out like this, destructure React a little bit, and get just the component property so that I can extend the component class. So this is the syntax you have to memorize. Class, count, class, and then your name, whatever, counter, extends, component, then brackets. Babel will let you start just making properties. Like if you needed state, you could do this dot state equals. We'll talk about state later. But for now, we want to use the constructor function, which we've seen, right? And what's the first line of our constructor function? Super. So right here, this is your boilerplate. This is your least amount of, well, you need some more to make it. Yeah, that's what brings in all of yeah, that's exactly right. Exactly right.
What if you didn't want all the components from the super?
If you didn't want all the methods from components, I don't think that's an option. I think we just get everything, we inherit everything from component. So one of those things that we inherit is when the render function runs. So render is a lifecycle method. It's usually not grouped with the other ones because it's standard. Every single one of your class-based components will have a render, and it's the same. It just needs to return. Does anybody have a guess what it needs to return? JSX. So I'm going to put a little high in there so that when we render counter in app, we'll be able to see it.
So they must have a super, a render, and a return.
Yeah, yep. Constructor, super, render. That render needs to return something. We're getting a counter is not defined in app.js. So where do I need to define this? In the import, yep. Cool. We're getting our high.
Why did it say useless constructor?
Because it's not doing anything. We're not assigning properties or anything. So the next thing we're going to talk about before we get to state is event handlers in React. So before we used to like select the item and then say item dot add event listener and add the event listener. It was all this hubbub. But now we can just write a button. Damn it, where are you? And then in that button, we'll say on click, camel cased, equals, and then we'll put a method in here for it to run. So, or a function, any function you put in here. So, yeah.
So why do we render a class, but we don't render a functional, well, they're functional, but why don't we render the other?
Good question. So in app, let's see, index.js, so the springboard, the starting point for our app is going to call app, right? It's going to call the app function. And that app function returns JSX. So it's like, right here, it's like, hey, go call this and insert whatever's returned to my root, right? So plug it into my HTML. So what gets returned is this HTML. Now, classes are a bit different. So here when it sees counter, it's like, oh, here's an instance of counter. And counter, it's an object, not a function. It constructs objects. But those objects will run .render when it needs to. So React is controlling that. So render will get called and then we'll get it returned. So classes don't have a return ever. It's only the methods that get a return. So the purpose of the render method is so that we can return something from it and React can render everything as needed. Okay, so let's write a little method.
And on click and click, are they two separate?
They're the same event. It's just the syntax. And you're going to use on. So for a form, it would be on submit in React, and for, I don't know, on whatever, on key change, whatever. Okay, so then we just give it a function to call. So right up here, we can write our function. We're going to call this one increment because that's what we're going to be doing in our code. And for now, let's just console.log +1. Okay, doesn't like this, so we have to say increment. So increment belongs to counter. So when the component gets made using the counter class, anyway, it's going to have a a method increment, but we can't just say increment here. It has to be this dot increment. So this refers to the component. So we're saying, hey, the increment method on this component. So this dot increment. And then we call it good. Hopefully this works. Yes. Cool. All right. You guys want to keep going or stop for today or?
Keep going.
Okay, cool. Me too. Okay, so this, I'm going to introduce something on par with props on levels of importance and like fundamental part of React. It's called state. So if there's any data that may change, we'll put it in state. So let's take vacation spots for an instance. The background color on those components, once they're rendered, it's the background color and the dollar amount and the title and everything. Those are great props because they're not going to change. But if maybe there was like a button on each of these vacation spots that was like visited or not, that the user could toggle it. Whether it was toggled or not, that Boolean would have to be saved on state because it changes. So in our instance, we're going to make a button and we're going to have a counter that every time we click the button, it'll change. And so since it's changing, we want to save it on state. So in your constructor, you set up state's default, where it should start. So and every property will get its new, yeah, and you can hold as many things on state as you want. So maybe like counter, and maybe there's like a user, and maybe a bunch of other stuff. You can keep as many things as you want on state, but we're going to focus on just this .state.count for now. So if I want to see that in the DOM, I just have to reference that variable. So how am I going to break out of my JSX so that I can reference a JavaScript variable? Cool. And then it's going to be this dot state dot, any guesses? Count. So it's a 0 because that's what we gave it as a default.
How does that render that? Like what kind of tag is it in?
Yeah, let's put it in like a P. What should we put it in? What would give it a little margin on the left? P tag? I thought I could option over it. Is there like an option over for anybody knows it? Click and drag. Cool. Oh, nice, separate line. That's nice. Okay. So there it is. So whatever the count is, it's going to reflect up here. So what we want to happen is when we click this button, on click, we want it to do to run this function, and we want this function to change state. So let me show you the wrong way. This is bad. If I catch you guys doing it, you're out of here. Okay, right? So this would change the counter. It would increment the counter, right? It'd change it from
It's not returning.
cannot read property state of undefined. This is undefined. Oh, very cool. Okay, this is undefined. So right now this is a function, and this function has a this, but it's not defined. We actually want to refer to the this of the component. So right now it's pointing to the this of the function, but there's a type of function that has no this, and it's the arrow function. Help me, Emily, if I'm doing something wrong. So this arrow function doesn't have a this. So when JavaScript sees this here, it's like, am I in a function? Do I have a local this? No. Okay, what's the more global this? Oh, here's a class. That's the only difference besides syntax between our old functions that we used and arrow functions, is that arrow functions just don't have a this. It makes it easier in this instance. I don't know though. I really don't know.
I think it's just the word function allows for this object. But since you're not saying function here, I think that's what it is.
Well, I'm not saying function here either. It's an arrow function. Take what Nate says like with a grain of salt, you know.
Well, doesn't this refer to the class counter?
Well,
Yeah, it does. It does.
I just wish they used a word that wasn't this.
Like self. I know that this keyword is so hard to talk about. Anyway, this isn't working. This is dumb. Let's see if let's see, console.log this.state. Here, we'll see it in its object form. So what this .state, it's changing, but why is this still 0? The reason why is because nothing's told React to render again. So yeah. If React sees that state, well, yeah, let's. It'll lose what state is. State will start back. It'll read this again and go back to the defaults. So yeah, it's just not re-rendering, and maybe we could like put a manual re-render in here, but that's bad. Also, it's against the rules to ever change state directly. You can't change state. That's just. It's against the rules. So, possible, but against the rules. I was just doing it, but yeah, it's against the rules. So, leading up to the method. So, what's this method called that I need to use? This dot to change my state.
Set state?
Yeah, this dot set state. So, set state's sweet. Set state, it can take an object, and it's what you want your new state to look like. And it's kind of like the put method. Remember on the to-dos how you just had to, like, if you just wanted to change description, you could send the put method just an object with a new description, and it wouldn't touch the other properties. Set state's the same way, so it's only gonna change count, so anyway, so count, we'll start it, and when you give say an object, you're saying I want you to be this. You're telling it what to be, and you don't care about what state was before. That's the big part. If you don't care about what state was before, so let's just say we're trying to change it to 10 when they click the button, then you give set state an object. Cool, huh? So set state will run, and React will tell this component to re-render. Okay, but with a real counter, we do care about what state was before. So if you care about what state was before, then you actually pass it an object, or sorry, a function. So we care about what we're going to call prev state. Because we care, if it was 0, we want it to be 1. If it's 1, we want it to be 2. So we care. So we have to give set state a function. That function will give us access to prev state that we define right here. But this function, it returns what we want state to look like. So it's going to return that same object with counter in it.
Prev state's a JavaScript conventional word.
React conventional word, yeah. Yep, I got this from the docs. So we can still do the same thing. You know, we can still just return the object that instead we were passing to set state. Oh, come on. Emily, what? That's my question. Yeah. Why isn't this working?
Because you're not using free state or does that?
Maybe it does care. Let's use it though. So prev state. So prev state is like state. So it has a property called what? Count. Yep. So prev state dot count, and we can do +1. You don't want to use ++ in this instance. You're saying, yeah, prev state. So let's. I'm skeptical just because the other one wasn't working.
So why don't plus
Plus it's like the order that it executes. Also, when you do plus, it directly it'll change prev state, and you don't want to change prev state either. See, we're not changing prev state.
Okay.
Yeah. But if we were to say plus, it would change. Okay. Cool. That's what it is. That's what it is the whole time. Dan, you're the new Emily. Cool. All right. Pretty dope, huh?
Super. And you have to use prev state or?
You have to use prev state if you care about what state used to be. So, like, let's say we're trying to hack, we're trying to cheat, and
You couldn't increment it if it didn't have prev state.
it would be against the rules. Do you wanna break some rules real quick? So I think this will still work. But you don't do this because React has a sophisticated reconciliation process. So Nate showed you key this morning, and the key in a map is because when React is trying to figure out how to render stuff, it has like these algorithms running and stuff like that, you know. You don't know exactly like when state will be updated. So we don't know the condition of this dot state is the short answer. And in big applications, this code will break everything. Everybody will be like, who the hell? You know. So that's the wrong way. Using prev state is the right way.
You're recording this, right?
Are you?
Okay, so there's assignments, and you can do them all. They're on the syllabus for tomorrow.
You can do it.
Yeah, with what we've seen here, pretty much. React Ice, it's a challenging one. But let's look at DJ React real quick. Let's see if there's anything I'm forgetting. Yeah, I don't know. You could do this right now.
So we're drawing that stereo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Has anybody here completed like all the extra credit on every assignment that was given?
Close.
I think I have.
Okay, so this one will be a step up because I like just I got out of control with.
What's the minimum?
Minimum professional. I think I usually say professional.
If I didn't,
It was.
Do you see the final product? You have to have that?
I don't think any like the goat. I don't think we've ever had a goat.
oh man.
I think I've seen this though. Anyway, I don't think I'll officially assign them yet, especially if you're still practicing props and math. Get those down first. Like finish, I don't know. I've seen a lot of you working on blog props, so. It doesn't hurt to redo those three though. Vacation spots, friends with pets, and blog. Well, just those two probably. Vacation spots and friends with pets. until you're really comfortable, and then move on to tomorrow's assignments for state. And Nate will go over it again.